Hello, readers. Welcome back to Reading in the Middle, the podcast where we celebrate the power of middle grade books and the brilliant authors who create them. I'm your host, Anisha Jeffries, Youth Services Manager at the Cleveland Public Library, and I am thrilled to welcome Tanita S. Davis to the show. Tanita is an award-winning author whose books explore the complexities of friendship, identity, and family. Her novel, Mare's War, earned a Coretta Scott King Honor for its powerful depiction of two teens going on a road trip with their World War II veteran grandmother, who tells them about her rebellious past. She also has written Partly Cloudy Serena Says, and Figure It Out Henri Weldon, each offering unique and thoughtful perspectives on growing up and finding one's place in the world. Her latest book, The Science of Friendship, follows 8th grader Rylee Swanson, who, after falling out with her best friend, embarks on a school project to understand what truly makes friendship work. Blending storytelling with real scientific research, Tanita crafts a relatable and insightful journey about connection, self-discovery, and the challenges of middle school relationships. Today, we'll talk about her writing process, the inspiration behind her stories, and what's next on her literary journey. Are you ready? Let's get started. And welcome Tanita S. Davis. Hi, Tanita. Welcome to Reading in the Middle. How are you today?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, too. So thank you for joining me. And I want to ask you about the concept of your newest book, The Science of Friendship. It's so unique. What inspired you to explore middle school friendships through this lens in The Science of Friendship?
Well, I'll tell you, not a lot of people know this, but the whole bullying scenario that happened at the swimming pool in the first scenes of the book happened to me. That was my introduction to that sort of 7th grade parties where you get invited to the it girl, you finally get invited to the house and you're all ready to, and I just could not understand what I had done to deserve that. I could not understand why people I thought were okay or who were my friends were suddenly just acting out. And so I thought a lot during junior high about why are people the way they are. I had kind of an interest in psychology, basically, low-key sociology from that point, just kind of wondering about people, trying so hard to understand, the world around me in reference to myself. And as, 1,000 years later, I go to college and I really enjoyed my sociology classes there. And I really have continued to really enjoy kind of reading up about, I jokingly call it my armchair sociologist. I like to read about the way people interact in groups. And so I just felt like that is something that it would have informed me so much in junior high. If I had just known that the fact that friendships change and that, we don't study ourselves normally as in junior high, we're clueless as to, what all is going on. But for me, if I had just known that this is transitional, this is the thing, this is how it's going to go, this is normal, I would have felt a lot less like the world has ended.
Yes, because something that's traumatic, a traumatic experience, it lasts with you, and you don't, you could kind of brush it off, but then you think about it, and it's therapeutic too to write about it as well. And I want our young listeners to know that, and because you're a writer, if you have experiences, it's good to write them out, to get that out. Writing is always a good experience, journaling. And did you do that when you were in junior high? Did you have a journal? Did you write things that were going on in your life as a young person?
Most definitely. I remember one particular Thanksgiving, my grandma and I got into it, and I wrote it out scene by scene, like it was a episode of Family Ties. I mean, I was there writing it down, pretending that I was a television producer, and that was a way of it happening to someone else, number one. But two, it really helped me to kind of like look at my life from outside of it and go, huh, I wonder if other people go through this. I just was literally wondering that simple thing, and that's what caused just sort of prompted me to write it out.
So Riley's friendship makeups and breakups feel authentic. Was that one of when you decided to write the book, was that something that was first on your list to write? I know you have other books, but was that the first thing on your list when you were thinking about writing books for middle grade readers?
It's a funny thing. We writers sometimes end up writing like variations on a theme. I write a lot about families. Even when I was like in school, a friend of mine and I, we one of our classes, we had to swap papers and sort of do copy editing on each other's papers. And she's like, you write a lot about families, and I hadn't really thought about it, but I do. And in families, by which I mean even families of choice in terms of our friends and the people that we like choose to spend our time with. I was spending a lot of time because I guess there's still a part of my brain that's always exploring that. And I don't think about like, I do not set out to say I'm going to write about this thing. I always start with characters. I'm a very peoply person. I like characterization. I find the way people interact really interesting. So I'll think of a character and a situation they could be in. And inevitably, 9 times out of 10, I'm like down the road and suddenly we're talking about friendships, because basically it's such a core part of our lives, who we love, who we cannot stand and don't want to, and get her out of my face, and how we deal with the people who can't stand us or who love us. That's just so much of part of, the foundation of our lives. And so, yeah, I don't necessarily think in terms of I'm going to write about middle grade friendships, but it's there. It's such a big part of your life. And even statistically, and I've read research about the friendships that we have in junior high, they last, that it does stick with you, how we learn to interact and all of that. It can form the basis of how we have relationships as adults. So it's important.
I'm glad you mentioned that because relationships are central to many of your stories, from family bonds and Mare's War to friendship dynamics in Serena Says and Partly Cloudy. How do relationships in the science of friendship expand on these things?
Well, I think probably the way that kind of we begin in where you start when you're starting, well, depending on if you're in middle school or junior high, how your school is worked out, you start as one of the younger students and you come in with a set of expectations, and you come in with a set of beliefs about what your years are going to be like, what your time is going to be like in junior high or middle school. And then by the time you leave, you have a different idea. And looking back, could you have told that sixth or, seventh grader how it was going to go? No. And I think that that's when Rylee begins her experience in middle school. She believes, one way. She really thinks one way. And I think in all of my books and in all of the discussion about relationships, I think maybe what underscores all of them is that it's a process. It's never a static thing. We begin and we move along this road. It's always a journey. And even as adults, we change our minds about how we see people and how we interact. And so I think maybe that's maybe sort of an overarching thing that would encompass all of my books, but definitely the science of friendship as well.
All of your characters in your books are these young ladies, these young girls that are strong. And Rylee Swanson is so unique and yet just so relatable as Serena or Henrietta. How do you craft protagonists with such distinct yet universal experiences?
Wow. Thank you for, first of all. If you were to ask these characters, they would not see themselves as strong. They would see themselves as struggling. They would see themselves as just doing the best they can and casting about for whatever works. I would say that looking at themselves, they would be like, I don't know what she's talking about. But I think that one of the things that their strength comes not just from within, but without. They have moms, they have grandmas, they have, a teacher who will say the right thing. They will have friends who will nudge them and be like, you don't need to be doing that, So they have people around them. And again, it comes back to relationships. It's all the intertwining of the things that are woven in to create the fabric of who we are. They would not say they were strong. When as writers, we, I think, to a certain extent, put a bit of ourselves in each book, in each character, protagonist and antagonist. And, I look, I struggle with them as I'm writing their story, as the things happen, and I'm like, oh, how's she going to get out of that? And then I have to write my way out of it. But yeah, it's not in the moment, I would say that, yeah, they would not consider themselves strong, but it's the overarching picture. It's the, at the end of the day, it's all these small decisions and all these small, things that they've gotten from their community and the people they've chosen to surround themselves with that make them strong.
I wish I had your books when I was growing up. Their voices really spoke to me. As an adult, of course, reading it, but had I had your books when I was growing up, really would have been it would have been very comforting. And Serena Says, friendship shift in unexpected ways. How does Rylee's journey differ in the way that she grapples with friendship breakups and forming new connections? If I had those books, it would have been easier for me. That's
Yeah, I have to say, that's one of the things that I love about reading middle grade is so much of it speaks to me. And I think, man, if I had this one, because it really just normalizes friendship breakups. It tells you that this is a thing that could happen. So it doesn't catch you off guard. It normalizes the fact that sometimes your friends will decide that they're wanting to be friends with someone else. Like, boy, Serena says that was a really hard thing for her to accept, that her best friend's friendship circle kind of opened. In Rylee's case, she hadn't, centered it down to, I have one best friend right now. She had her crew. But the thing that she was unable to see, and maybe it was a little bit easier for Serena to see, was that she had changed too. It wasn't all, I mean, in Rylee's friend's case, they were doing some shenanigans because they felt like it. But she too had made changes and choices along the way that had caused her to rely solely on a different group of people instead of keeping her friend circle open. As Serena was able to see, Joanne's like making her friendship circle a little more open. She had to understand that, what, more is better. The more the merrier, literally. She was trying to, narrow it down. And that's not how the best friendships work, that we're open, our friendships are stronger when our friends are free to have more, the more people who can support you, the better. It's not always easy to feel that way, but.
No, I wish I had thought like that when I was younger. I didn't. But
look, I didn't either. This is old people talk now. This is the years of understanding and going, oh, this is something I should have known, but I sure didn't.
Right? So
yeah.
And so when you mention family in Mare's War, it highlights family bonds, while the science of friendship centers on friendship, but also touches on family dynamics. How do family relationships shape middle grade or middle school friendships in your stories?
I think one of the things that I would like to show my readers is that their family situation, whatever it is shared. Somebody else has a family like yours. Somebody else is just a grandma and a mom. Somebody else is, living with a great uncle or something. Somebody else is like that. And so no matter what your family dynamic and makeup, they can strengthen you too. It doesn't matter if they're not the traditional, mom, dad situation. And I think that kind of what's a part of maybe American youth culture is that, especially like if you look at literature, or the example we often use is Disney, how often like the moms die off in all the Disney movies or whatever, and you're just like, could somebody have a mama here? I mean, is that too hard? But for a lot of people in fiction, they will erase the parents so that, it's the kid-led adventure. But I maintain that our parents, our families can be a reasonable foundation. You don't always have parents who understand you like 110%. That's not realistic. You're growing apart, especially in middle school. You're growing apart. You're making choices independently, but they're not people who didn't go through what you did. And even if you don't touch on every point, you can touch on some. And I just feel like, I want people, I just want to normalize like being involved with older people and being friends with them and being able to speak to them like they are worthy of your respect, and vice versa. That there are adults in books who know how to, respect that a young person has their own mind and their own thoughts and is not their mini clone.
Yeah, and that's really reassuring, to have those adults and characters in the book and in the characters' lives. Rylee starts eighth grade with no friends and a painful friendship fallout. Now, how does her journey of self-discovery compare to other characters like Mare or Serena?
Mare is such a unique character in that, because of the fact that it's historical fiction, and in the 40s, young ladies of the same age of, you have a 13, 14-year-old now and then, the levels of maturity and what society expected of you were vastly different. But it is the same journey, though, because, even though Mare went out there trying to be grown, she was all, she had everything she needed. She was just going to go and do this Women's Army Corps thing. But she, came to had to have the same issues and, place her trust in the same way and learn to trust the people she was with and, kind of link back to family and think of them. And, it's a lot of the same things. It's just a different time and a different way to say the same thing. And it's really funny as we keep talking about this, I'm like, yeah, boy, you really do, right? In many ways, it's like, it's not the same story, but it's the human story that I think that in a way was just kind of celebrating this human story of connection and moving along this path towards growing up.
I agree. Your books explore very important topics, from microaggressions and Partly Cloudy to the complexities of friendship and the science of friendship. So how do you approach writing these authentic middle grade conversations?
I listen a lot, not necessarily to live conversations, although I have nephews in junior high and high school, or as during my writing time, I spent quite a bit of time just listening to them talk. But I listen to kind of what is popular in terms of music and movies, and I listen to sort of the messages that the, people who are teen favorites, what are they kind of saying? What's making them popular? And basically, it's not always something that is tangible that you can really put your finger on, but I try to get sort of at least a piece of that world as background, what's important to young people now, and try to sort of embrace that and put that somewhere into the story that I'm writing. It's not always in a sort of a direct way, but I think it's worth listening to sort of like the pulse of what's going on, what's important, what's sort of carrying the conversation among young adults. It's part of it is that I also taught school, and that helped my time teaching school or substitute teaching, as, in and out of places that we moved. It was really a gift to just be sort of in the thick of being in a classroom. It's been many years since I've been a classroom teacher, but I'm really glad that I had the experience, because I think it's just something that I think back to, and it helps me a lot to sort of remember the things that were important to my students and remember the things that were important to me and sort of incorporate them into the whole.
And you also get an opportunity to be with them for those moments, when they're in the classroom, the after recess or before recess. What grade did you teach? What grade? Was it middle grade,
I
junior high?
taught fifth, and I had the school that I worked at was a school that was for kids with learning disabilities, and so we did most of my kids were fifth and sixth, but we had numbers instead of, it wasn't divided by grades because the kids moved around for classes. And so most of my kids were 10, 11, 12. And that was a good group to sort of, because it's like you watch the transition of ages and attitudes and understandings of things, from one end of that spectrum to the other.
So, what do you hope readers, especially those navigating their own friendship challenges, take away from the science of friendship?
The very first thing is that I hope that they remember that they are not the only one. Everybody goes through these awkward, prickly, horrifying moments that you wish would be over with. I think that if you could just know that you're not alone, that it's not just you, that carries people a long way. Also, that even though this is happening now, understanding that now is not forever is a thing that it was something that my mom used to tell me all the time, this too shall pass. And I would go, okay, whatever. But junior high is not forever. And I had to tell myself, even high school is not forever. School is not forever. Everything feels like forever. Everything feels so like the most important thing when you're in junior high and high school. And it's just the best thing you can do is say, school is 180 days. I will count these down. I can do this. I have got this. And just, you're not the only one. Everybody at this developmental stage of life is in this weird place where you're changing what you believe or what you want or who you want to hang out with. And it's just basically chaos. It doesn't have to feel like that, but you spend a lot of time wondering, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? It feels like everyone else knows what they're doing. Why am I the only one standing here? You're not. Most people are confused and trying to play it off like they got it. That's like a lot of life. Adults do it too. Nobody ever has it together. So I think that is what I want people to take, young readers to remember. What you're doing is good enough. What you are doing is fine. You are fine,
Yeah, that's some wonderful advice. I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's not forever. Just remember, it doesn't last long, right? Because it goes by very, very fast.
Yeah. It always feels like it lasts long, but it really doesn't.
It sure doesn't. Tanita, have any moments, have there any moments that stood out where a reader's response to your work surprised you or deeply moved you?
I have had some really really lovely letters. And I actually got one from India, which was a real surprise to me because my work is not, I didn't think it's a North American thing. I figured that most of my readers were Americans. But a few years ago, I got a letter from a young girl in India who had read one of my books and she just felt that she needed to tell me that she really appreciated it. And that I think was a shocker for me. I was like, really? All the way in India. So that was a delightful thing for me because I'm glad that, one of the things that I often speak of to people is the commonality of the human experience. I believe that no matter what country we're from or basically what age group we're in, we go through so many of the same experiences. We have so many of the same things. The human story is very similar. We often like to put boundaries or, divisions around, well, this is me and y'all are like that over there. No, we're so much the same. And just to have this young person remind me that, the same things that I struggled with in the United States, she struggled with in school in India, and we were able to kind of vibe on that. And I appreciated that so much. That was a delightful, surprising thing.
That must be really nice to have, to get letters about something that you're writing books, because like you said, you write them, you send it out there, and, people read them, but not knowing if they're touching anyone. And to get a letter, that's confirmation. So that's awesome. Okay, Tanita, I have some questions for you.
Okay.
Get ready. Okay.
All right.
If you could give one piece of advice to your middle school self, what would it be?
Normally, I had not thought of what I would tell myself, but I think I would encourage myself to not be afraid of reading nonfiction. That's a strange thing to say, maybe, but at the time, my parents were very, very loving but strict people, felt that I needed more exposure to reality and less exposure to fiction. And so during middle school, I was not allowed to read fiction, and I hated it. Oh, I hated it. It was the worst. I thought I was going to die. And I didn't want to read nonfiction. I balked and complained and basically whined about it. But there is story in history. It's right there in the word. And the lives of those on whose shoulders we stand are worth exploring. They have things in their lives that are worth knowing. And I wish that I had been more open to what my parents were trying to give me. And I wish I would have, not been a pain about it, but really gotten into it and found more things to know and to understand myself. And so my advice to way back then me would have been, girl, get over yourself and pick up a book.
That's good advice. It's good advice. Also don't be too hard on yourself too back then, because when you're a kid and your parents tell you something, like they're telling you for your own good, you don't know at that time. You don't know, but you look back and it's like, oh, okay, I get it. Now, if Rylee could meet Mare, Serena, or Henri, who do you think she'd connect with the most and why?
That's a good question. Ooh, our girl Riley's a bit cynical because she doesn't necessarily believe that, after her experience, she's not too sure about people. So I frankly think Henri would get on her nerves. She might be a little too sunny side up for her. But I think that she might get along with Mare because, respect. Mare's out there doing stuff. She has a situation that is uncomfortable and not workable for her. And, she made decisions and she moved. She did something about it. And I think that Rylee really wishes that that's the type of person she is, she could be more, which explains her, trying to use science to help her, understand and make sense of her world. She's a kind of a do something girl. So I can see her really thinking that Mare had the right idea.
I agree with you.
I like that question.
Thank you. I knew you would say Mare. I knew you would say Mare because I would say that too. So here's another question. So if Mare, Serena, Henri, and Rylee had a theme song, what would they be?
Wow. Could we lean on Beyonce for this?
You ever think about making a playlist for each of your characters?
I've had people tell me I should. I'm terrible at that kind of thing because my musical tastes are all over the board.
That's okay.
There's an old Bette Midler song, Some People's Lives. It's not a bouncy song or a fast song, but the whole gist of the song is how some people's lives go a certain way, but if they were loved, if they had known they were loved, that it would have made a difference. And I think that my characters are girls who are not only going to know that they are loved, but they are going to be able in turn to turn and love other people in their lives. So that's kind of an offbeat theme song maybe, but I think that's like the overarching thing as like they're going to know how to be better people, better at like this whole life thing because of their experiences. So Some People's Lives. That's my very odd theme song to pick.
Oh, it's not odd at all. No, I love Bette Midler. So no, not at all. Can you share a sneak peek of, I know you have The Science of Friendship, but any upcoming projects that you're excited to explore?
Very, very much so. I have a book coming out this year. It's called Barry Parker Doesn't Catch Crushes. And I have been having so much fun working with my editor and the graphic design cover team and B. Jackson, the illustrator, on the cover. And we've been kind of going back and forth and bouncing our ideas. It looks so good. I just got the final of it this past week and I'm like, yay, it looks great. Bright tangerine cover and this girl just ripping a heart in half on the front. And it's just really fun. It's a story about a girl who's very best friend is suddenly all into boys, and then there's stuff going on in her family, and she's just like, wait, all y'all need to hold up with this crush business because I'm over it. However, however, that's not how the world works, so
No,
she
it
has to
doesn't.
learn to deal. But we also had fun with the title, Barry Parker Doesn't Catch Crushes.
I
'cause she
love
doesn't.
that. And I love her name, Barry Parker. I like that.
Yeah, her whole name is Beryl, like the stone.
Oh,
Yeah, she's named Gemma Beryl after her grandmother. So, yeah,
what advice would you give young readers inspired by The Science of Friendship or your other books who want to tell their own stories?
I would definitely encourage them to read a lot, read as much as they can, always with the reading, and write. And, you know, write song lyrics. You hear a song and you can change the lyrics, or write commercial jingles, or write, poetry. Read and write, because I think that if you want to write your own story, you certainly have the ability to. You just need to practice getting words on paper, and you need to practice reading to hear how other people do it. One of the things that I like to do is I read my own work out loud to myself so I can hear what I sound like. I can hear what my characters sound like. It's easier for me to imagine them speaking when I can, sort of hear it in my own voice. And we used to tease my niece because she would, go in her room and she would record herself like, she would pretend she was a weather forecaster when she was 5 and 6, and she would like make up these massive forecasts. But she learned her own voice, and she's a really good writer because of that. And that's one of the things that it just has value. Write, read, and imagine, and create your own characters, create your own imaginary things. I like to eavesdrop on people when I'm at, you're at a fast food restaurant or you're at the library and you hear people's conversations. Imagine what else they said after they left. Or what I used to also do is back in the day, now this is dating me, when there were catalogs that came to your house from Sears and JCPenney. I used to write, I would sit down with an ink pen and I would write conversations between the underwear models. That's probably not real normal, but it was fun. I entertained myself writing, cartoon bubbles, and, they had conversations all through the whole thing,
It's like a meme. It's like back then. It's like a meme,
Yeah.
like creating your own meme.
It's right. Early memes with ink pens.
Yes. Having a conversation, Oh, no, yes.
Exactly.
I remember catalogs. Is that dating us? I used to love
Totally.
those. I love that. Tanita, so here we're doing something new. It's what I call rapid fire fun.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you some quick questions. You can't think about it. I'm going to ask you some questions. You just give the answer. And believe me, it doesn't have to be that quick, but quick enough. Quick enough. So, you ready? Okay.
Ready.
Favorite historical fact you learned while writing Mare's War?
That there were African-American women in the European theater. I hadn't known that before I started researching.
A science fact that inspired the science of friendship.
That the Surgeon General had put out that report about loneliness being as bad as smoking several packs of cigarettes a day. I don't remember how many off the top of my head, but that was a shocker.
Best comfort food for a partly cloudy day.
Well, the best comfort food is either fried potatoes or mashed potatoes. It's potatoes. Yeah, or both.
One book recommendation for middle graders.
Ooh, okay. Wow. That's Andrea Wang's Summer at Squee. That came out last year, and it is just really wonderful.
Is that, listeners? Besides Tanita's books, you want to get her recommendations as well, her recommended book as well. So that's it for the rapid fire fun. Well, Tanita, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Reading in the Middle. This was such a fun conversation, talking with you about your book and, growing up in, I'm going to say we grew up in the 80s. Yep, we grew up in the 80s and how fun that was. A real side note, I will say this, it's 2025. Do you remember when We Are the World came out? It was on every single radio station. You would turn the radio station on and it was on. You would catch it in the middle. You would catch it in the beginning. Young people, you guys just don't know. Like, the radio was it for us. And my goodness, that's almost 40 years ago, but I can't believe it. I just wanted to add that oh boy, how fast time goes. I mean, yeah. So I just wanted to mention that, but it's just been a pleasure having you on this episode of Reading in the Middle, and I want to thank you again.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
That wraps up another episode of Reading in the Middle. A huge thank you to Tanita S. Davis for joining me today and sharing her insights on writing, friendship, and the power of middle grade stories. Her latest book, The Science of Friendship, is a must-read for anyone navigating the ups and downs of friendship and self-discovery. Along with her other amazing titles, you can learn more about her work by visiting TanitaSDavis.com and follow her on social media. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It helps us reach even more middle grade book lovers. You can also follow us on social media and Instagram or at readinginthemiddle.blog for updates on future episodes and guest announcements. Until next time, keep reading, keep exploring, and keep celebrating the magic of middle grade literature. I'm Anisha Jeffries. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again on Reading in the Middle.